So, Ina Eisenberg, you're originally from where?
Memphis.
Memphis, Tennessee. And what brought you to Greensboro?
I went to college here.
Where'd you go?
University of North Carolina. It was a women's college.
Right, and so what'd you study at that point?
Just basic education. That was all.
Yeah. Now, were you married when you came here to Greensboro?
No, I was a baby.
And yet, at some point along the way, that changed, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, we were here in school, and I met Ken, and I went home and went to the University of Tennessee for almost 3 years, and then he called me, and we said we would meet, and we decided to marry.
How about that?
So we've been married 58 years.
Instead of Memphis, you chose little old Greensboro.
Well, first we moved over to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, how about that? I didn't know that.
We were there for about 3 years, and then we decided it was an opportunity, business and pleasure, to come back to Greensboro. It's a wonderful move for us.
And that was in what year?
66.
So 66.
We moved back here.
And as you and I have been talking over the years, you brought me into a lot of different stories of the congregation of Temple Emmanuel, and I was wondering if you could tease out a few of them. For example, there was this partnership that took place between First Pres and Temple Emmanuel and Holy Trinity. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was called the Fisher Park Community Project, and it involved not only men and women from each congregation, but we also hired professionals to help us when we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
We started out with a breakfast club for the children, and it was all the children that were just living in Fisher Park area. That's all that we could accommodate. So we gave them tutorials for their schoolwork,
Right.
and then we started a summer program. And we had a day camp for them that was fabulous. We used the skating rink room of First Presbyterian.
Yeah, I didn't know they had a skating rink room.
Yeah, they did. And we had they had a full kitchen in there too, but it was this huge room, and so we could break into groups and serve each age group. But we had wonderful professionals who would come and talk to the kids, and then every day we would take them over to the Y and they would go swimming. Mm-hmm. So they had a wonderful time. And we did that for a number of years, and unfortunately we didn't keep any good records. I wish we had it would have been good for us to know where those kids ended up, because they really had opportunities. It was magnificent. So the congregational project, I don't remember how many years that we were involved, but I would say it would have at least been 5 or 6 before there were other opportunities for children and they could move on to other programming.
Right.
But it filled a need that was magnificent.
And these were elementary school?
Mm-hmm. Elementary school kids.
And which of the schools in town did it mostly?
I don't remember.
How about that?
I don't remember. I just remember that it was just the children that lived in the area, and I don't remember which schools they attended.
Right.
But there was, I guess they went tutoring over there in the afternoons, maybe even before they went home. I don't remember that component of it.
Right.
I really just remember that it was so well organized, and it was so well executed. Everybody that was involved took it seriously and really participated. We would go over to Temple sometimes and have activities. We would go down to Holy Trinity and have activities. All the ministers and Rabbi Tesk, they were all involved and gave them spiritual guidance. It was wonderful.
Wow.
And we were fortunate to be involved in it. So I don't remember how many years it lasted now. I'd have to go through the minutes up in the archives to see.
Right. But still, that type of a focused project, that the congregation was involved with, and really in the neighborhood there, but also impacting the lives of kids. As you and I also were talking, you were telling me a little bit about what you consider to be one of the main things that Greensboro's Jewish community, which is known for a lot of things, but was involved with. And I think I knew about a later part of the history of some of these efforts, but why don't you take me into a little bit of the resettlement effort, in particular with those who are coming from other countries here to the United States, and in particular to Greensboro.
Right. Well, we had a call, the Jewish Federation had a call and a visit from Hias.
Right.
And it was 1991.
And that's the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they said to us that all of the families that wanted to leave the USSR could not go to large cities. They couldn't accommodate them.
Right.
And they wondered, would we be willing to settle some families? So we met and we said, yes, it would be a wonderful idea. So Charlotte, Winston, Chapel Hill, Raleigh, lots of Jewish communities in North Carolina said yes. But we took 4 families. And when they came to us, each one of them had 1 child, and they were all school age. So between this whole Jewish community and everyone who knew someone who could help, we didn't have the resources that a large city would have, but we were able to provide each of the components for a successful resettlement.
So walk us through what that meant. I mean, it's because again, right now we're taking a look at efforts to resettle, for example, Afghan refugees who would be coming to the United States. But these were Jewish people who were coming over from what is now the former Soviet Union. And like you said, in big cities they would have the resources, but what would that mean here in Greensboro in terms of those different components?
Well, the first thing that we had to do was we had to use social services. We had to use the health department. We had to go to social security for them. We had English as a second language. We had to go down to GTCC and secure that they could enter school. We had to be sure that they were provided transportation, because the bus system here is still not what it could be.
Right.
And even though they lived on West Market Street, to get downtown would have taken them too long. They would have missed the places. So we had to have, we had 4 families for each Russian family, and they were their backbone. And then we started asking even more people to help, because it became where they had so many times that they had to go places and do things, and we had to be sure that they would arrive on time. But mainly it was acculturation, which was using a television set, tutorial at home once they started their English as second language classes, because if they didn't have the tutorial, it wouldn't have mattered. We made sure that each child went to B'nai Shalom, so that each child would understand Judaism and they would begin to form a Jewish home. 2 couples belonged to the temple and 2 to the synagogue. And Shelley Weiner and myself, we were the co-chairs for the project. But it took more than a village. I think when I think back, there was a gentleman here, he was an endodontist. I thought maybe they might have medical problems that we were going to really have to address when they came to the States. But our families had dental issues. And this magnificent gentleman, he was a friend of the dentist who was head of our project. And he said, I don't care what it takes, I'll help. And they would go over there and he would make sure that they didn't lose their teeth. It was incredible. Then our dentists that were out of our congregations who took care of them made sure that their mouths were restored, and it was unbelievable. I mean, I just kept blinking my eyes. I said, look what's happening here. So our families loved Greensboro and our community enough that they settled here, and then they brought their families to town. Then we started taking free cases. But we didn't have any idea what we were getting into. It's all just people to people.
Right.
And we were so proud that we could do this for 4 wonderful families who have flourished and grown and just made a wonderful life for themselves.
It's fantastic. I mean, you regard this as one of the most important things that this community has ever done.
I do. I really do. I was told, though, by one of the older members of our temple that they hadn't seen anything like this since World War II, and how proud they were of all of us for taking the charge and making sure that our families had what they needed, the tools to become American citizens and get along and raise their families here and just have a wonderful life. I will say that I did get a call from a very special woman who said to me, because of what we did, that she started the Jewish Family Service. She said this was what she saw happened, and she said, I can do this.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So we're very proud of our families and of their children and of their abilities. It's remarkable.
Yeah, you know, one of the things over the course of this past year that really struck at our hearts was the passing of Faina Bachkis. Faina was such a gem and such a bright light.
Lady.
Yeah. She worked on this project. I guess she must have been one of the earlier families that came to Greensboro.
I believe that they were a free case, and they came after the first 4 families who had settled, because after the first 4 families came, their families came first.
Sure.
And then the Federation was willing to continue on, because the model was set, and we could just go ahead and easily say, well, this is what we can do if you want to come here.
Yeah.
I will say also that I found that the whole community of Greensboro embraced this project. I had a friend who was head of the Employment Security Division, and how many trips I made there, I cannot tell you, with our families to see if we could find the employment for them until we got where we needed. We had a real computer programmer.
Right.
And so the Federation paid for her to go over to UNCG and take COBOL.
Right.
And she ended up in a very nice position because in Winston, RJR was taking business from Russia, and she could help. So that was a real plus. Yeah. And we didn't take any professionals. We asked for families that we could help, and that was a big part of our success.
Right. So let's shift gears a little bit and tell me a little bit about some of the other things that you've been involved with in Temple over the years.
Well, I've been involved with Sisterhood. I was on the board of the Temple for 6 years.
Right.
In the old days, you stayed on when you were before you were the president, when you were president, and 2 years afterward.
Sure.
And let's see, we had, trying to think what else was really exciting. Well, I think this was all through with Fisher Park. We got a call one day, and Rabbi Tejas called me. He said, we've got 35 ministers from Europe coming, and they're coming through town, and would you put a dinner together for them?
Okay.
I said, well, sure, we'll do that. And I just remember that it was so nice. They were so appreciative, and had a few people that went down there, and I thought, that's the kind of things that we did in the old days.
Right.
Yeah, if you wanted something, you just picked up the phone and called us, and we made sure it happened, which was wonderful.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we helped with the religious school, and we helped with everything.
Right.
It was just wonderful.
Yeah. One of the things that was particularly helpful when I was interviewing here, I guess it was right around the time that we were looking to move here to Greensboro. You and Kenny hosted Mickey and me as we were looking at the congregation, looking around town. I've always been very grateful for that.
Oh, we enjoyed having you. It was wonderful.
What was that like when the congregation was looking to bring on, making a move into a new building and then bringing on another rabbi into the congregation? Because those kind of happened in consecutive years.
I think that the most wonderful experience was seeing this land purchased here on Jefferson Road,
Right.
and the dream of building a new home for us. You know, years ago, someone and the congregation had the foresight to put us down on Green Street
Mm-hmm.
so that we could thrive and grow. And now, with this particular building, in this particular location, I think it's just wonderful because I'd say maybe the next at least 35 to 40 years, I think you have plenty of room to grow.
Absolutely.
If not, you can always add on. You've got plenty of space here.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, when people will consider this facility, you know, we're sitting in the Sukkah outside, but they consider this to be the new building. I understand, relatively speaking, but, you know, it's next year on the high holidays, it'll be 20
years old. That's right.
I hope we've treated it okay. I know that you're...
Oh, you know you have. Well, we've got a wonderful House and Grounds Committee, and
Yeah.
I think they're doing a bang-up job keeping the place looking terrific.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful facility, and I think that it'll be used more as the years go on. This is an opportunity. I still would love to see in the future for the triad to have a Jewish community center.
Right.
We've never been able to achieve that, but I think between Winston-Salem and High Point and Greensboro, it would be a wonderful thing to
Yeah,
consider.
I've always looked at it and said, you know, minus the workout equipment, but we could always, you know, just kind of do push-ups or something on the floor, that we have this wall-to-wall vision of programming, if
Right.
you will, at least coming out of Temple Emmanuel. But no, I hear you. Were you involved in when the preschool for Temple Emmanuel got going?
No.
Did that predate you, or?
No, it was after we were
Yeah.
here. It was a wonderful addition.
Yeah.
I remember when it was started and thought, this is terrific.
Right.
You know, you have to fill the needs of your congregation,
Sure.
young and old, and that's why I love when you use Cineplex.
Yes, of course. You know, this idea of having
Because-
lots of things happening. We don't go on that, what would you call it, the scarcity model. That's the thing that I was thinking of. You know, where, you know, if you can't do two things at the same time because you're afraid that one is going to, you know, overdo the other. And there have been times when you said, no, let's just do a lot of things at the same time.
Correct.
And to have it going. So that's, I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah.
Well, I remember we had a focus group a few years ago, too, to see about what we could do to make programming more interesting here.
Yeah.
And what other congregations are doing to attract members to come. And I think a lot of those needs are already being met. There's a theater group now, which is wonderful.
And again, who could have predicted, you know, that we'd find ourselves in the middle of a pandemic in which we need to keep distance, and we've had to be very creative, if you will, in terms of how we're doing things. And, you know, we'll take a look back and say, well, you know, here are things where we could have really, you know, we can give ourselves a big pat on the back, and other things that, wow, you know, if we only had thought of this then. But I take it that there's a lot of appreciation. Your kids grew up.
Yes, our
Temple.
children grew up in
Yeah.
Temple Emmanuel.
Yeah.
They belong to Nifty,
Right.
and our daughter went to Nifty Camp. She went to Warwick, New York, to Quds,
Sure.
and then she became the director of her Temple's youth group
Right.
for 7 years in Indianapolis Hebrew.
That's right.
And she would go to Quds all the time because her friends were still there, and her granddaughter went to Quds. And because of Quds, our granddaughter went to Hiller High,
Right. Right.
which I say is wonderful.
I'll tell you, my own kids went on it, but the more that our youth are going on that program, we have one that went this past semester, and there are a couple that are going to be going in the spring of next year, and the more that can happen.
Well, I would suggest that anyone who is interested in their children or their child rounding out their education, they really should look at Heller High. It is a magnificent program.
That semester program in Israel, the Reform Movement ones, it's really outstanding.
Right, right.
So in our last couple moments here, you know, just at least in terms of because you and I can schmooze all day, but you know, just in terms of what we're recording, what is it that, you know, that you'd like to say to, you know, to the temple, to the community right now?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that how much we appreciate all that our temple family does for our community. I think that the programming and any possible way to keep connected, particularly during the pandemic, you all have met and ticked every box. It's just been remarkable, and we applaud you. And I think another suggestion would be, come to temple. Physically come. If you're not interested in services, come over and see what you can do to help the staff in the admin building. If you have a special talent, use it, because that's the only way that you'll feel connected. And it's up to you. No one can do that for you. This is a remarkable congregation, and whatever you want, you can find it here, but you have to come and find it. So I would say try it.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, we're here during Sukkot, and you know, this is the time of the year that we remember wandering in the desert, right? To make our, you know, to get to that goal of getting to the promised land. And I always think to myself, it must have been an amazing encampment. There were 12 different tribes, and each one had, you know, these resources, and people could just do many different things and made it all work. And I think that Torah really, well, that's your Torah. That's what you're teaching at this point. Through your actions in the past, Ina, as well as what you're calling out for people to see in terms of their own place, right? You know, like I've heard said many times, you know, Lador Vador, you know, this is a thing that just passes itself from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
And they'll be following incredible footsteps of what you and others have done with this congregation for, you know, for decades. So thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate our time together. Folks, we'll see you real soon, and thanks for being here.